Paulie, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. Great to be on the show, man. Thank you.
All right, listen. I know you've been all over the place. I'm sure you probably can't leave your house without being asked about what the heck went on with these sparring matches. I've heard you on podcasts. I've heard you all over the place. We go way back, sort of. You're from BK. I'm from Manhattan. Huge fan. What the hell went on when you sparred Conor McGregor? And before you even answer that, when you were a world champion, all your years in the ring as a boxer, what is the proper etiquette of a sparring partner? Basically, break that down first.
Well, with a sparring partner, when I was a championship level fighter, you bring in several different sparring partners in the camp. You break it down into different rounds so that you are getting the maximum work. You usually get a few rounds a day out of each of them. So, let's say for one day you're boxing 8 rounds, you'll probably use 2 of them and you do 4 rounds each. And that will keep them coming in fresh, and it'll wear you out a little more. While they're a little bit fresh. So that way you'll never actually have to put one particular guy in for a lot of rounds because, you're going to be in better shape because you're the one training for the fight. He's not. And so you usually that's why you bring in several different sparring partners so that they stay fresh and you don't. That way they're testing you not just tactically but also mentally as well.
Now, when you've had sparring partners...
All my years in boxing, that's all my years in boxing is concerned, Mike. I mean, I've been a part of many gym wars and whatnot. So the gym wars, the whole thing with the gym wars, isn't really an issue for me at all. That was something I probably would expect every time I get into a championship camp.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, when have you ever sort of, like, as far as sparring, what was your expectations? What did you think you were walking into with Conor McGregor? Like, how did that even come about?
His team reached out to me. They wanted me to work with them, and I was kind of taken aback a little bit because usually you never hear of anybody calling up a retired fighter for sparring. So I thought it was a little bit odd. But when I found out that he had no boxing trainer in camp, a lot of people started mentioning that to me, and they said, maybe he wants you in there just for some tactical stuff. Because, he doesn't have a legit boxing trainer in camp. He just has a lot of the team that he's had around him for mixed martial arts. So, I thought, hey, maybe that's a possibility. It's maybe it's one of the possibilities. So I said, we made a deal. I didn't really negotiate. I said in several different interviews. I said that I took the first offer they gave me. I didn't really ask for any accommodations in particular or anything. I was fine with the accommodations they had for the sparring partners and whatnot, and that was fine with me, So that's how we kind of agreed on everything, and then we moved on to eventually it was time for me to come out to town, and that's how things ended up playing out,
All right, this is Michael Rappaport on the line with Paulie Malignaggi, 2-time world champion, all caught up in the middle of this drama. Do you feel like you were sort of bamboozled and caught off guard and sort of used in a way?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, there was probably an agenda. I didn't really see myself walking into it because usually you don't see guys having issues with sparring partners, Usually if you have a problem with a guy, you fight him,
right.
Or you don't fight him. Or sometimes I've seen guys where if they don't fight him, they don't want to give them the payday. They don't fight him, Or you just take them in and you fight them. The whole sparring thing, I don't know. I've never actually heard of that in my life, on my end, because I think if you're gonna dislike somebody, hey man, let's go with 8 or 10 ounce gloves and let's get it on. You know what I'm saying? Or like I said, if you're a big shot and you want to be a big shot in that regard, you don't fight them and you don't give them the payday. I mean, it's one or the other, really. I've never heard in my life of somebody having a disagreement and say, let's spar. Like, that's never. Don't get me wrong. Gym wars happen all the time,
right?
I mean, especially in the old school Grease's gym where I came up out of the wild card gym where I was training for a lot of years. Gym wars happen all the time, and rivalries develop inside the gym all the time. But as far as you not liking somebody from the outside and them not liking you from the outside, and then like just okay, let's spar. I mean that is some of. I don't know how much I can talk on the show. I don't know how much I can curse or whatnot, but that is some of the.
Don't do it.
Wussy shit I've seen in my life,
Yeah, no, I get it.
You don't set up sparring with somebody you don't like. The gloves are big, the headgear's big. You're just not going to do enough damage to them you're gonna go at it, but you're not gonna do enough damage to them like that,
No, I got it. You know, the thing that offended me, Paulie, as a boxing fan, because I've never rooted for Floyd before just because of his style and some of his personal stuff, but I'm rooting for boxing in this case, and I think this whole thing that Conor's doing is a sham, and I think it was classless. If you guys fought 12 rounds, and the only photos that exist are him maybe or maybe not connecting on a punch, and you maybe or maybe not getting knocked down, or quite possibly getting pushed down by a guy who doesn't know how to box but knows how to, you know, MMA and fight and be overly aggressive. That's the thing that offended me. If you guys fought 12 rounds, where's the pictures of you punching him in the face? Where's the pictures?
Yeah, I mean, it was only photographers for him. I mean, listen,
of course.
If in 12 rounds he only got a couple pictures like that, I mean, you see that he doesn't really have much what do you want to call it? Much material. You know, I mean, in 12 rounds, I think both guys are going to land some good shots. You know, and the photographers are there just for him. If that's all he has, then you know you can kind of use your mind and say where the sparring went. You know, they were good. You know, it was a good session. I mean, I started picking up the pace as it went along, and I started getting the better of him. But it was a good session. I mean, you know, he came out strong, and we worked back and forth. It was you know, it was kind of jockeying for position. I thought he was going to take control, and I took control, and then he kind of closed it strong. You know, so it was. I mean, it was the kind of sparring session where at the end of it, I thought we had buried the hatchet. You know, because we went at it pretty good. And like I said, I mean, I came in better shape. You know, I came to camp totally out of shape, Mike. You know what I'm saying? Like the first time we sparred, especially, like I hadn't fought. You know, I hadn't barely trained. Like I got the call and I started training in a half-assed way because I got the call and I started training, but then they never got back to me, so I wasn't even sure I was going. You know, it was like, I don't know, man. I mean, if your moral victory here is you won 12 rounds at a retired fighter who'd barely been in the gym, I mean, then God bless, you know. But for a guy who's supposed to be able to achieve so much, I think at the end of the day, you're probably supposed to hold yourself to a higher standard than that or than this, you know. I mean, big name sparring partners don't come in, but he's burning all his bridges, you know. I mean, you know, big name fighters don't usually act as sparring partners because they have their own thing going on. But like I said, he's burning all his bridges. He did it to Chris Van Heerden, where he tried to record and like set up a little photo album or for himself, a little video images for himself, where he could dissect it and edit the video. And then Van Heerden ended up having the full video, and he looked bad, and there was an egg on Conor's face. And then, you know, he did this to me, you know, but the only thing he learned from the Van Heerden experience was to make sure everybody checked their phones and their cameras at the door so that nobody else can take a sneak video or pic.
Is there video?
In this regard, I mean, like I said, the first time when he did it Van Heerden, I guess I didn't learn the lesson. You know, I thought, like, you know, that was probably a one-time thing for him, and he learned his lesson. But now that he did it twice, I mean, after that happened with me, Andre Berto decided he wasn't coming to camp. Andre Berto was going to meet up with him for one sparring session. He was going to be in Vegas. And I spoke to Andre afterwards, and he's like, I ain't going over there. You know, he goes, I'll knock his ass out. You know, I told him, I said, Andre goes, I told him, I said, you know, you're not going to be playing that camera stuff with me, you know. And he didn't like the answer Conor gave him. He didn't like the response Conor gave him, you know. So it was like he didn't give him a definitive no, we won't have cameras, you know. So Andre was like, man, I'm not going over there. I'll knock his ass out, you know. So I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't blame you, you know. So it was kind of that situation where, you know, he's kind of burning all his bridges. He's got, like, you know, the sparring partners he's got in camp. I mean, he's got one kid who, you know, who's a friend, what I would consider a friend of mine. He's like a journeyman kind of kid. He's been in with a lot of tough fighters. You know, had some bad raps. You know, a good young fighter. I mean, a good older fighter. You know, and then he's got a young amateur kid who's, you know, a decent fighter. And he's got two MMA guys. You know, you're training for the best fighter in the world. You know, I don't know that Floyd Mayweather can win a welterweight title at this point. I mean, I don't know if he'd beat Errol Spence. I think he'd beat Jeff Horn. So, you know, I think Mayweather's still a championship-level fighter. But you're getting ready to fight one of the best fighters in the world, maybe the best fighter of the era. I don't know if he's still the best fighter of the era right now, but he's definitely been the best fighter of his era. And you're getting ready to fight him with that kind of sparring, you know, and you can't even bring anybody else who's sharper or better anymore because you kind of burned all your bridges. You know,
now Paulie,
for this camp, but just for future camps in general. So
I'm on the phone with Paulie Malignaggi, two-time world champion. You said that when you sparred Conor, you hit him in the body, and every time you hit him in the body, he whimpered. What did those whimpers sound like? Was it sound like a eh, or was it like a or was it with an Irish brogue? Like, can you give me a description of the sound? Did it sound like what did it sound like? Did he sound like he was being violated?
He whimpers to the body, you know. I think, especially if he's getting fatigued a little bit, you hit him to the body, he's going to whimper, you know. And I'm not the only guy that said that. I think one of his other opponents had said that as well. I think Nate Diaz had mentioned that as well. I think body shots are not a common theme in mixed martial arts. So, there's a debilitation to them. There's a slow debilitation to them, And I think, these are just things that he's learning in training camp. He's coming along. I'm not going to lie to you. He keeps coming along a little bit in the time that I saw him there. I think he'd be a decent prospect. But I think, you make these kind of jumps in your career according to, the wins you get. And, you don't just jump into these kind of things. But, of course, it's the kind of situation where he's been so successful at mixed martial arts that, there's a curiosity to see if he can bring this kind of success over to boxing. And so it's been this big curiosity has generated this amount of hype and whatnot. A lot of people think he can do it,
Now, Paulie, let me ask you a question.
There's an awkwardness to him, Mike, but, it's at the end of the day, you're going in as an underdog, of course.
We got 30 seconds. What is your prediction? What are you allowed to say? What do you think? How do you think quickly do you think this fight's going to really pan out on August 26th?
Listen, you favor Floyd Mayweather. I think he's a logical favorite. Conor's younger. He's got that youthful energy, and he's got a little bit of awkwardness. Can he make that work for him? I don't know. I think at the end of the day, Mayweather is legit favorite for a reason. You don't need to ask me why Mayweather's the favorite. I think even the odds makers know why. That's why they've made him such a heavy favorite and whatnot. But Conor has a legion of fans. Are they rooting with their heart more so than their mind? We'll find out the 26th, But there's definitely a lot of people that think Conor McGregor can do this. On the 26th, I'll get into the more tactical stuff on the broadcast as opposed to, what might work and what might not work and whatnot, and why it will work or why it won't work. And, of course, I'll leave that decision up to the fans at home once I give that tactical breakdown. All
right, well, Paulie, listen, I think as great of a boxer as you are, you've made it to just as great as a boxing analyst. I'm glad Conor's lucky you kept it classy, because in my book, out of all sports, you're a top 10 trash talker of all time. You've kept it classy. Brooklyn's in the house. I appreciate you calling into the Rich Eisen show, Paulie Malignaggi, and keep doing your thing. And I can't wait to see this thing unfold, and I'm going to be listening to you and watching you on the 26th give all the information and insight. So thanks for taking the time, Paulie.
I appreciate you having me on the show, Mike. And I keep it classy, but I'm from Brooklyn, man. So we know what we call guys like that. I got a dirtbag. At the end of the day, I'm going to call him a dirtbag.
Absolutely, Paulie. I appreciate it. And again, thanks for calling in.
Thanks, buddy.
My man.
Bye-bye.
Paulie Malignaggi.
The Rich Eisen Show. Weekdays at noon Eastern on radio stations across the country and audience.
If you like that video, be sure to download our app, and I'll be sure to move Week 6 games to Saturday for that wedding you have to go to.